So the poem is called The Trees, number 2, from the Calm Centre. Okay. It's so soothing to walk among the trees, on paths knotted with their roots and blanketed with their leaves, to feel them charging the air with ease. It's like floating in a pool of deep, rich green. But I feel a tinge of sadness too. Once the world belonged to trees. We were only their guests, as I am now, walking in their shadows, sucking like babies at their fruit. We only saw the sky through their branches, tender mothers, the source of life. Why did we need gods when we could worship trees? But then we grew hungry for autonomy and rejected their easy fruit. We stepped out of the shadows and cleared a space to grind our crops out of the ground. Jealous of their effortless dominion, we slashed and burned them down like Columbus tearing through the new world, amazed at how easily they fell at our feet. And now we think the earth is ours. These trees, the sadness is mine, not theirs. They have time. They are content to wait until we realize that autonomy is an illusion, that identity can't survive without being shared. Until we remember that we're still their guests, or don't remember and leave the world to them again. A broken world that will heal in time back into primal harmony. So just take the next minute in silence. If you're on mute, sit back, relax, look out a window. As you come back into the space, take a deep breath, pause, give yourself some time to arrive and settle into this space with everyone around you today. Maybe just take a moment to notice who's in the room with you. If you're on, the best way to do that is gallery mode. You might see some people you recognize, might see some new faces. Feel free to say hi to people. So today is, the theme of the month is awakening, and the theme of today is all about purpose. And I was saying to Sarah, our guest today, I normally do a bit of a musing, a rambling of what's been going on in the month or what's coming up. And I was swimming this morning and literally my head just went meh. That's the word, meh. Don't know what that means to me. Well, I do. It's just a bit like, yeah, just don't feel anything. I feel incredibly neutral, neither up nor down in the emotional stakes, and not feeling exactly. I look out the window and I peer over my computer top. It's like not even enamored with what's going on outside. It just feels everything has suddenly slowed down again. I think I was probably hoping that by the 5th of April, we might have had sunshine. and there might have been a few more leaves on the trees. So I'm in Hampshire, UK, and minimal leafage going on down here, team. One of my team though, Jenny, she's got her own successful business as well. She's a yoga instructor, and I was reading one of her posts yesterday, and she says at the moment, whenever she's walking around in nature and she sees a tree with blossom on it, she just shouts blossom. I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that. So this morning I was driving in the dark and I saw a couple of trees with blossom, and I kid you not, on my own, there's me in my head going blossom, blossom. And I was like, maybe this is the new game to play, because I've got to have something to bring a little bit of joy with nature, because at the moment it feels very, well, for me anyway, just feeling like it's stuttering. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that or is seeing that in their own spaces. I also thought it was May when I was talking to someone yesterday. So I think I'm sort of time warping, and I've deleted April from my memory banks. So I don't quite know what's going on there. But yeah, just feeling quite meh about life at the moment. I don't know, how's everyone else feeling? Are you up for it? Is everyone sliding into an Easter break with delight? No, you are allowed to speak, by the way. If you've never been here before, we do positively encourage conversation or in the chat box. So don't feel like you've just got to stay in silence. There's lots of, oh, you coming to, welcome back, Jason from Ireland. Nice to see you coming back in. So today's conversation is about purpose, and I'm going to just spotlight, I'm just going to pin Sarah and myself, so makes it nice and easy. Is it pin or is it spotlight? Yeah, it's pin. There you go, Sarah, in full glory.
It's spotlight. Pin is just you.
Oh, I knew. Whose voice is that?
That's Nick Barr.
Nick, I knew you'd have a. Thank you. That better?
Then we got both of you like that. Yeah.
Cheers. So Sarah's my guest today. She's on the left-hand side of my screen. Sarah and I, we were talking about this, weren't we, Sarah? We met, we think 2016, and we were together in what's called COLPI. It's Systemic Constellations for Business. And we went on a journey for a good couple of years together, if not more. Talking all things systemic, energetic, walking around rooms, standing in spaces, noticing what we noticed. And Sarah and I've just, in that classic social media vibe, stayed in contact, but also just as friends as well, but also supporting each other's work. So I'm really delighted to have Sarah here today to talk about part of her work is around purpose. So Sarah, welcome to SRF.
Very much, Kirsty. Hello, everybody. Good to be here.
Sarah, could you'll do a better job than I will. Can you introduce yourself to the group and explain, what do you do?
Sure. I mean, really, you could be my tribe, because I am a fellow facilitator, coach, trainer. My background is as a business psychologist. So I got chartered many years ago. I've been self-employed for nearly 20 years. So that's a whole journey in itself. I'm on the corporate pitch very often, coaching individuals, increasingly coaching teams. And I write as well, so which feeds my more introverted side. So that's a little snapshot of me.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. And how did you get specifically into, I've written here, how did you get into purpose? Like, because it's a big one, I think. It sort of blows my brain up quite a bit. So can you just share with the group, how did you arrive here at that space?
There are so many answers I could give to that question, but if I just focus on one, and this goes back, I don't know, many years, probably 15 years ago, and I took a teacher training program with an American author called Neil Donald Walsh, who himself has a very interesting story. So these days, well, he's one of, I think, 6 authors ever to have had 6 titles on the New York Times bestseller list at the same time, which is an amazing achievement.
Wow.
When he was 49, 50, He was absolutely down and out, literally down and out, homeless, been through various marriages. His life was not in a good place anyway, and I'll try and keep this short. He wrote a very angry letter to God, and got a response, let's say. And his book, so he's best known for a series of books called Conversations with God that are extraordinary. Anyway, I read these books about 20 years ago, very inspired, and I went to do the teacher training program with him in Ashland, in Oregon, in the States. And one of the things that Neil shared that really impacted me was that he could put his purpose, and he would use the P word, into 7 words. And his 7 words were to change the world's mind about God. And Neil will often say it's that clarity of purpose. It's because it's so crystallized and so compelling for him. That is the thread that he's followed, enabled him to write all those books. And so that really inspired me. There have been many other inspirations along the way, but if I had to pick one that got me started, it would be that one.
Thank you. Gosh, I love a good story. Helps loads. So we're going to talk about purpose today, but we're going to take a different angle, aren't we? It came to you in a moment of quiet about purpose, the allies of purpose. I was just wondering, before we dive into that conversation, whether to just put it out to the group and into the chat box, how many of us in the room, I was going to say know our purpose, but actually I'm going to say have a sense of our purpose. It'd be really great to see in the chat box so we can, and if it's a help for anyone, I waver. I think I have a sense of it, but I find it really hard to articulate. I'd love to be able to articulate it clearer. So we're getting a yes. I've got guiding values more than the purpose. I think so. Different ones for purpose and professional. Yeah, I have a sense of it. Thumbs up. Not really. Have some moments, but it's vague. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for your yes to a sense, no to articulation. Nice, Maria. You know, I was lucky to do some work on it a few years ago, and I tweak it, and I think that's also important. I think I get a sense, for me anyway, it's not for me set in stone. There's a refinement. I think it sort of stays consistent, but there's a refinement. I thought so, but it's evolving as we speak. Nice. I have a sense, but I struggle to pin it down. Interesting. How, Sarah, as you're reading those comments in the chat box, how does that resonate with what you know to be true about people working on purpose?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate people sharing where they are right now, from the I'm pretty unsure, or it's a bit vague, or actually it's more about following my thread.
Yeah.
Or it's more about guiding values. And maybe just to say, if you don't really have a sense of your purpose, you're actually in very good company. Partly because I think it really evolves over time. And also what the research says in the corporate world is it's about 20% of managers who have a sense of their purpose, and 80% either don't, or they're really grappling with it, or a bit mystified about the whole thing. So, you know, just helpful to get that benchmark, I think.
God, my brain just goes, oh, can we do a whole session on purpose at some point? Maybe we'll have to do an SOF workshop with you, Sarah, on purpose. I'm sure that might get some people fizzing. Thank you. Tell us about purpose allies, though. What is that about? Where did that come? Yeah, what is it?
Well, it's a deliberate attempt not to get too strategic or left hemisphere about purpose. Hence, I just thought, let's go for allies. And I also wanted to convey a notion that purpose is a journey. It's not a destination. We never really arrive. And I think, as with many journeys, having a sense of companionship really helped. So that's why I wanted to go for allies here. And maybe if I just launch in, shall I just
go for it, Sarah.
So I think there's something about the ally of resonance. And what I mean by that is I sometimes get asked the question, like I got asked the question last week, how have you built your career? And I thought, gosh, like that, that's an interesting question. And I've never really set 5-year career goals, or never been able to answer the question, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? And yet, when I look back over the last 20 years or 25 years, or maybe even longer than that, I have followed a guiding principle, which is follow the resonance. And so what I've learned to do that really works for me, and maybe I'd love to hear your experience, and there's going to be a breakout room conversation a bit later where you can talk this through, is when I have slowed down and noticed what really energizes me, whether it's a person or a place or a project, then I've learned to trust that sense of resonance and follow it up in some way without needing to make anything specific happen. So that would be that first ally of sort of resonance, noticing what's energizing. And of course, related to that is dissonance, and noticing when you feel off track. Actually, some of my biggest learnings have been when I've absolutely ended up in a cul-de-sac, or in a position maybe as an associate consultant, and at the start it was great, but 3 years down the line I've run out of juice. And so noticing both resonance and dissonance can be really
nice. And when we were talking, Sarah, you talk about Alexandra Pope and
yes.
follow the breadcrumbs. Could you help people? Because I think it's a great purpose ally. Number one, maybe follow the resonance, but what is that?
Yeah, so just to really acknowledge Alexandra Pope. So she's an amazing woman. She's just turned 70. I met her, I think it's about 15 years ago, where she was a Brit that emigrated to Australia and then came back to the UK. She's an author, and she's the founder, a co-founder of the Red School, and she calls her body of work menstruality. And she's interesting because she would say that her work came and found her. She would say probably no woman on the planet would set out to make their work, their calling, about menstruation, menopause, because of her own struggles with it, deep struggles. She just developed a real passion for helping women with the deep feminine energy, as she would call it. Anyway, a recent reflection of Alex Pope's has been, when she looks back on how she's followed her calling and vocation, it's felt like following a trail of breadcrumbs in a dark wood sometimes. And I think that's a very good metaphor for purpose. I think we sometimes want it to be on a billboard up in the sky and all lit up and it's really clear. And it's just not like that on the ground a lot of the time. So hence the trail of breadcrumbs, which can go very thin sometimes.
Yes. I actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking back to about 3 years ago. I think it was that 3 years ago that we all were all in isolation and COVID, but I genuinely felt I couldn't see the path in front of me for what was coming. And I think noticing backwards, then I was still following the breadcrumbs, and they were breadcrumbs, and it was a case of just put one foot in front of another and trust the process. So there was, again, following a sense of the energy versus being really clearly defined.
Yes.
And that resonates with me. And I think we also had the language of sometimes we walk in darkness when we're thinking about our purpose. And that's okay, as you say, like it's not always going to be bright and shiny and it's all on a vision board and it's all neat and tidy and tied up with a bow.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you also for the comments in the chat. There's some great reflections coming in. Like, yeah, Katie, if it is Katie, like it's like listening to the whispers of intuition. And I think whispers is such a good word, because I think the future is whispering to us right now. But it is a whisper. And so, you know, just like spending the moments we had here in stillness and silence, so you can just tune in at a deeper level, is really, really valuable.
Definitely. Okay, what's the next ally you noticed?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it's closely related and it might be a curious one, but I actually think it is the ally of fear and resistance. And I got onto this, and I'll bow to him. So this is Nick Williams, an author of many books, including a book called The Work You Were Born to Do. And also an interesting story that Nick has. He spent many years, I think, as a salesman of used cars, and then became quite a leading light in the whole mind, body, spirit field. And Nick speaks very powerfully, and it really it's always resonated for me, that actually when we sense our path, our true path, if you like, we feel a double set of feelings. So there's a feeling of pull towards it, but there's also a feeling of resistance, fear, anxiety that can come up. So it's like this double pull place. And thanks to Nick, I have learned to interpret fear and resistance in a different way, that they can actually be positive indicators.
Yeah, nice.
And telling you, you know, that you're going down a dead end. It's a very interesting.
And actually, oh gosh, I got all goosebumpy. So our guest next month is another friend of yours and mine, Bodie Aldridge. And I got his newsletter last night. And guess what the first line is in his newsletter?
What's he talking about?
You cannot live your purpose without fear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I did bless Bodie. I know Bodie, he ran a session, and I can talk more about it later, at the Purpose Collective recently. And so much of Bodie's perspective really resonates.
Yeah. Can I read the first paragraph of his newsletter?
Go for it. Yeah.
He said, the purpose paradox includes the deep desire to follow our bliss and fully express ourselves, and the reality that you cannot experience this unless you're willing to lean into the edge of your comfort and feel the fear.
Yeah, that's it. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone is one thing I learned from Neil Donald.
And I guess as well, when we're all thinking, well, I do anyway, when I think about purpose, again, it's roses, it's excitement, it's the fireworks. And I haven't really heard, well, I haven't done enough of my own research on it, but you know, people talk about it, but there's also that fear element of, is your purpose? Yeah, there could be fear, there could be resistance. And so I wonder if anyone else is going, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't appreciated that. If I'm sensing into my purpose, or I've even stepped into it, I can feel a sense of fear and resistance. I'm just looking around the room to see if anyone else has had that experience for themselves. Sue resonates, Monica 100%. Some what I call the wry smiles and the nods coming through the screen that I can see, Sarah.
Yes. Yeah.
Why do we resist, do you think? Like, where does that come from?
I think it's a very natural feeling of anxiety when we step out into the unknown, because I think a kind of true purpose in life really stretches us. I think it's in that zone between the comfort zone and, let's call it, I don't know what to call it, the strain zone. We don't, you know, it's not about stretching ourselves so far that, you know, it feels like a burden or a strain. But I do think a true purpose absolutely puts us in the stretch. And so natural that anxiety.
Yeah, okay. Marianne, I can see your hand up. Do you want to ask a question or share a noticing?
Yeah, I was trying to type it, but I couldn't, so I thought I'd just speak if there's
Yeah.
space for it. I think part of my fear is linked to other people's perceptions, right? And how other people are going to perceive what I'm doing. And because what I do is so closely linked to my childhood and to my early experiences. So I support kind of professionals supporting kids in care. I grew up in care myself. And so because it's so closely linked, it's so personal to me, it matters so much to me. But sometimes because it is just my experience and my upbringing, sometimes I feel like, am I telling people the obvious? Do they already know this? That kind of stuff. And that makes me doubt my purpose, you know, and it's often linked to what other people perceive. It's a funny thing. I'm really battling that at the moment.
Thank you, Marianne, for sharing that. The bit I noticed in that part of the comments of what you just said, Marianne, is it surely it's really obvious what I'm talking about. And by the way, I think I have the same sensation sometimes when I'm talking about facilitation and training, where it's really blindingly obvious how we should stand or the language we should use. But sometimes when it's really obvious to us, that's because it's our gift, and it's not obvious to other people, by the way. So trust what you're talking about. Is not right's the wrong word. Trust yourself that people need to hear what you're saying, and just because it's blindingly obvious to you, it will not be obvious to everybody else.
Yeah, I want to say, Marianne, thank you so much for sharing your experience and what you're grappling with there. And I think there's something about going on the purpose journey which calls on us to do exactly what you're doing right now, kind of noticing those critical inner voices that can come up and come into an easier relationship with your inner critic, if I can put it like that. Because the inner critic, I've learned, it never ever really goes away. And psychologically, and I won't go into all the reasons, there are very good reasons that we all have an inner critic. And yet, to the extent we can dial down the energy of the inner critic a little bit more and find more of a creative inner ally, it really helps us. And I would just say, take so much strength as well, that your purpose is so deeply rooted in your own childhood experience. And just one more thing, you're reminding me of something that a client said to me a little while ago. And she said, purpose is my anchor. It is stronger than my fear. And I really value that. I hold it close to my heart. Purpose is often seen as being your North Star. And I get that because it helps us navigate our way through life. But I love the notion of purpose as anchor. And that anchor is deeper than the fear. So thank you, Marianne, for sharing.
Thank you. There's some really interesting conversations in the chat box as well about fear and resistance and people's descriptions of the duality of the fear and the excitement of purpose, and actually when do we start to feel it? So a couple of people have said, both Joss and Joanna, in terms of it's about going to the end of your stretch zone and then either jumping off the cliff or free falling. Who's is it the French poet, and I can't remember his name, he's like, but you're standing at the edge and you're like, I can't, but what if you could? That's a real paraphrase of about 10 sentences.
Yeah.
What was the third ally that you had noticed in your work?
Yeah, it is the simple, humble, and yet liberating ally of conversation. And I noticed in the chat earlier, I think it's Jason, you shared about having had a conversation and recently and the impact that had on you. And I just encourage you, and we'll get to breakout room conversation, to make the most of the opportunity, because I think we all need companionship, encouragement. I have benefited so much over the years from conversation and the power of conversation. If I may just share a short story, and again, this is somebody else who's really inspired me with his purpose. So this is Jeff McDonald. He was global HR director at Unilever for many years, and he is now absolutely out there as an ambassador for mental health in the workplace. And the reason for that, and Jeff is very open about his story, is because when he was at Unilever, and he's open about his own struggles with depression and anxiety, I think it was a fellow director committed suicide, had suffered with depression and anxiety. And Jeff said the only difference really between him and me was that I could go home and talk with my wife and kids about my depression. So he's really onto the difference that conversation can make. And that is a bit of a dramatic example, but Jeff, really inspiring. And I just think we all need, particularly during these really intense times that we're living through, I think we can all benefit and be enriched by having a conversation with other people.
Amazing, thank you. I've just noticed Kat's message in the chat box about when many of us start our own businesses and start on this path of working for ourselves and creating our own spaces and probably just leaving the corporate world or an organization, the safety of the duvet, as I used to call it, leaving the Diageo duvet. Every conversation you have helps make things a little clearer, and it does. And if anyone is very new to leaving an organization, and I think there might be some people on here that might resonate with it, keep talking to people. Please, please, please don't think you've got to have everything sorted out just because that's what we used to be told in a corporate sense. You're meant to just know everything. When it comes to this part of your journey, it'll evolve and evolve. And you said 20 years, Sarah. I worked out it was 15 years since I left the corporate world. I'm like, blimey, how did that happen? And it's gone very quickly. That's the other thing to be aware of. Time will fly. So what we're going to do next is going to go into breakout rooms, and I've put you into pairs because I think that's probably easier. And some of you have told me that you're on telephone. So Emma, Shelley, I just want to acknowledge you're going to go into your own private room and just listen to white noise. What were we saying? The conversation to have is a bit of a hello, how are you? Maybe introduce yourself if you don't know the person you are chatting to. And talk about what we've just discussed in terms of the three allies. So what do you notice for yourself would be the first question. And then the second question is there another ally that you're noticing that works for you? Is there another ally that works for you? So I'm just getting a few more messages about people out and about walking. So just give me a moment to...
Could you remind us what the three allies are again?
Yeah, so do you mind writing those in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. So I'll put them in the chat, but the first ally was around resonance and dissonance and being really present to notice the whispers of your intuition, the whispers of the future. The second ally, fear and resistance, and not to interpret that in a negative way, acknowledging that double pull place. And the third ally is that tool of conversation, and how others, and that is a great comment in the chat, how others can sometimes see our superpowers, our passion, more clearly than we can sometimes. So those are the three allies.
Great. I think I've got everyone. There's a trio. I think we're good. 10 minutes. If there are any problems, raise your hand, come back. I will do work magic. We will have a chat when you come back in the room. So it would be great to hear what you've all been talking about. what were some of your noticings? What was coming up for you? Feel free to put your voice in the room or to write in the chat box.
I was with I think David, is that right? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, thanks. And we were talking about bless him, I felt like I talked for most of it about my resistance that I have to things that I see as my purpose, because I'm an IT trainer and I create e-learning and videos and do training online, and it very much doesn't inspire me, and I want to be a performer. And he said to me, well, why don't you do some stand-up or something? I was like, yeah, I did one time, but then, you know, it's really scary to do more. And I just got the number 2, fear and resistance. It's something I need to actually look at. Well, these are the fear and resistance. I need to actually go, okay, that's just fear and resistance. I need to take away all the meaning I'm adding to it. I've got a lot of training around stuff like that, but then you know that you're not using it, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like it's just fear and resistance, and it's just, I just need to go, oh, that may be a sign, like Sarah was saying, that that's what I should be going towards.
Nice. Thanks, Nick, for sharing and being super open.
Yeah, and can I just add, Nick, I really appreciate you sharing what you and David talked about. And I've really learned about, you know, the power of starting with small steps. And so I just share very briefly, I worked in the civil service for a number of years as an occupational psychologist. And Kit, in one of your comments, you were saying, you know, there are areas of your business that feel heavy, some feel alive. And of course, that's the reality, I think, of any work, any job. It's like, what's the relative balance? And after 5 years in the civil service, I was like way out of balance. A lot of it felt heavy. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And then one day I was put on a new project, and it was to, I was basically doing a lot of report writing, statistical analysis, and so on. One day I was asked to run a focus group for a very small group, like 3 people. And I got home from work that day and my cheeks were pink and my eyes were shining. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've had a really good day. And it was a clue that actually I much prefer facilitating groups and working with people than writing reports. And so I started looking for little opportunities to facilitate groups and so on. So I just want to share, like, baby steps can be really helpful.
Nice. Thank you. Who else feels like putting their voice in the room or in the chat box? It feels like a very sensitive subject. I've never seen the group so silent.
I'd like to say something, Kirsty, because it's hard to type on my phone. So
Okay.
At the risk of sounding like a teacher's pet, I'm going to just share this. This is what I shared in the group. So I was explaining to Lena how the third ally around conversations was the one that spoke to me most. And it's because of the conversations I've been having in the last 3.5 years in staff. Without any question, the meetings, the conversations I've had in this community, in all different, you know, it's absolutely helped me to be clearer on what my purpose is. And I still don't think I'm clear, because I love the thing that you said, it's about a journey. It's, you know, we don't have to be absolutely there. But there's always been something that's driving. But the conversations is the thing that's really helped me crystallize that. So thank you to everyone in here, because there's lots of faces in here, lots of people I've had those conversations with this morning. But yeah, that's a big.
And having been part of your journey for the last 3 years, and I'm going to just put you on the spot. When's your book out?
August.
Yay! So you wrote book. Very exciting. Fiona, feel free to write in the chat box what it's called, so people are in the same space as you, because it's a very specific genre, isn't it? I'd say. Katie, saw your hand up. Hello, love.
Thanks. Hi. Yeah, I had a powerful chat with Adrian, and there's a couple of things that came up. One is like, oh, you know, is is there this sense that you've got it all figured out if you know your purpose? And you know, we chatted about that, and I think no. I think it's like, to think that we all have stuff figured out is just a whole load of crap. And it's just constantly evolving and changing. And also, I think the people that get really fixated on purpose, like I have done, are the ones that need it most. You know, some people don't need this in their lives, and they're completely content and happy and don't need to know what their purpose is. And then the other thing for me is like the fourth ally for me personally is silence.
Actually, we did have a different ally, Sarah, when we talked about presence.
Yeah, that's another great one, isn't it?
And that's it. Well, when you said silence, we were talking about, you know, be fully here and now, notice the whispers of the future, the synchronicities. And I said, how do you do that? And you were like, well, you sit in silence, Kirsty. You know, but bit of meditation, or for some of us, it's drinking tea. How do you bring yourself to that presence? So silence might be a way of doing that. Thank you, Katie. Monica, hello.
Hello. Well, I had a lovely chat with Natalie Tucker, and this is her very first SOF. So I just thought I wanted to highlight the fact that she's a virgin to the whole thingy. And we had this brilliant conversation around facilitation in general, and what is a good facilitator? Because a lot of facilitators become very fixated, to your point, Katie, about finding the purpose. And I was in a workshop with Jan. I know you know him, Kirsty. I always forget his name.
Jan Jakobsson. Sarah will know him as well.
Yeah. And he said, really, it's a lot of facilitators, our purpose is helping other people or supporting other people, when actually, he said, the best facilitators actually have no idea what reset, change, or transformation has happened in other people, and to be okay with that.
Nice. Thanks, Monica. I appreciate that. And welcome back in a few months' time. Thank you. She's moving back to the UK, people. Watch out. She's going to be in person with us at some gatherings. I can feel it already.
Oh, yeah.
Sandra, I just saw your fourth ally in the chat box, like letting go. Sarah's nodding here.
Yeah, it's been a really tough one for me to, like, I suppose, letting go of ego, or I was talking with Jos about financial restraint, that, you know, we were so much on this path of purpose, and then suddenly all of the responsibilities that we have start shouting, and that noise can be really uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. So like really sort of noticing those and letting go, and trusting that process, which all feels very woo-woo, doesn't it, at the time, but somehow it finds a way.
It does work, Sandra. I used to be the least woo-woo person ever when I was in the corporate world, and trust me, I can do the woo and the way quite happily now, because it does work. And some of you who know me, I can see Katie smiling. I can do it. That reminds me, Sarah, we were just chatting off camera about the research of purpose. Could you, because I know some people would be interested to know about the research, and you also said about the correlations between accumulation of money and purpose.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly share a slide for those of you interested in purpose. This is from some can you see that? So this is some research by Steve Taylor, who's a transpersonal psychologist. And I don't have time to go all into this, but what you can see is he's defined 6 different types of purpose at an individual level, and they overlap. We don't just have one of them, but only 2 of them, which are the ones in orange, the self-expansive purpose, the transpersonal purpose, are correlated with levels of life satisfaction and happiness. And you can see there at level 6, if I can put it like that, people don't even talk about having a purpose. It doesn't really make sense to them. And I think one of the examples he talks about is Marie Curie. And there's more of a sense of like, I'm just a sort of vessel, a channel through which life flows through me. And I find it a really helpful way of differentiating these different types of purpose. Anyway, Steve Taylor, he's active on LinkedIn. He writes super articles. So that's one place you could go if you want to have some more insight into the research.
Nice. I am sorry for, I seem to be writing in capital letters all over the screen. Has everyone taken a photo of this? I'm guessing. You're very welcome to. Quick screenshot, team. We're gonna stop sharing for a moment.
Okay.
Now we could go on, and I feel like there is potentially a purpose workshop in the making for the SOF community, because I think this is something that all of us look at, notice, resonate with, curious to know more about. So leave that one with me. And Sarah sort of asked her already. One thing I really, maybe it builds on all of the stuff that we've been talking about today, and we're going to come back to Sarah in a minute. On the 21st of April, we have an intentional planning session within the SOF community. So I know that in the course of a year, if I do not pause and think about working on the business, don't working in it, nothing really ever changes. So every quarter we are hosting a 2-hour session whereby you come along just with yourself and your own thoughts and your own noodlings. And for the first hour, we do a reflect backwards on the last 3 months. A lot of the time is on your own, but then there's some witnessing in a pair. And then the second hour is looking forwards to the next 3 months and what are your intentions? And it's just about creating that space and having some accountability / consistency and giving yourself that time, because what we've also noticed is I think all of us talk a really good game, but unless we commit to it. So the link is there if you're interested in coming, because it'd be amazing to see you. Interestingly, some people have said, oh, what was that newsletter you read about fear? And it's by a man called Bodhi Aldridge. Bodhi is our guest in May. He's a friend of mine from Australia. He's over in the UK and doing his European tour, as he calls it. So he's going to come and talk about a topic that I think we hear a lot, but do we truly get it? The feminine and the masculine energy. And what does that actually mean? And how does that show up when we are facilitating or training? And what is that energy? So if you're interested in coming to that, it's a Friday, May the 5th, I want to say. And that's going to be with Bodhi. So you'll get a newsletter about that because you're on the list. Sarah, thank you so much for today. I mean, we've just scratched the surface, tip of iceberg, yada, yada, yada. How can people find out more? How can people connect with you? You have something called the Purpose Collective, which I think is beautiful. So what and how can people find you, please?
So I'll put a link in the chat, and that's a link to the Purpose Collective. The next 2 events, they're free. They're 1-hour sessions online. We've been going for about 3 years, myself and 2 other co-founders. It's a conversation about purpose.
Nice.
The next one is the 18th of April, 10 a.m. and it's about putting words to your purpose.
Ooh, timely.
7 words, but and there's one on the 11th of May, 10 a.m. with an author called Liam Black, who's published a book on purpose. So you're super welcome to come along to those events. We run them monthly. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get hold of me. I can send you my monthly newsletter. Oh, thank you, Kirsty. And mention the book. Yeah, so that's my book there, Powered by Purpose. It's got a foreword by Paul Polman, who was the former CEO of Unilever. That is inspiring, just reading the foreword. It's full of tools and frameworks for working with purpose at an individual, team and organisational level. And if I can just be so cheeky as to make a request, one way you could really help me is if you get Powered by Purpose, and you'd be willing to write a short review. It could just be a sentence, whether it's on Amazon, Book Depository, Goodreads. It really helps us authors with the algorithm. Anyway, I would be really...
No, it's fair. And another book Sarah wrote a few years ago now. It's called Life-Changing Conversations, 7 Strategies for Talking About What Matters Most. And that's a good book as well. If you need some ideas on how to structure conversations, I totally recommend that.
Thank you very much.
I know it's a different colouring now because it's been reprinted, but...
Yeah, second edition is called How to Have Meaningful Conversations.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Team, I'm going to stay on for another 15 minutes and hang out at the kitchen, as I've said. Sarah is off to see another mutual friend of ours to do a design session. So Sarah, can we just show our appreciation, please, for Sarah and give her a big thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sarah. It was really great.
Much appreciated, Sarah, and we will see you again soon.
I'm going to slip away, and I'm just going to say enjoy all the spring blossom and the sunshine when it comes. And thank you very much, Kirsty, for hosting.
My pleasure. Really great to have you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.